Chapter 34. At the top of the stairs, there was a short hallway with 3 doors off of it. The wall and doors were both wooden, and Alicia couldn't help wondering if they were an elf addition. What she couldn't do was move. Space up here was more intimate, and even though Retta had given her direction to come up here, it still felt like an intrusion. After everything, this was where she froze. But knowing her actions were illogical did nothing to alleviate the anxiety coursing through her. Alicia paused, took a deep breath, and resisted finding something on which to tap her fingers. Instead, she mapped out one thing she could bring herself to do. "That door is open," Alicia said. "Let's see if that's where Retta wants us to go." The sentence was a release for Kenny, who had waited patiently at her side. Now he bounded off into the room. Before Alicia could even make it to the doorway, he had raced back out. "This is it. There are clothes on the bed and a giant tub. I think it is made out of a type of rock, but it is so big someone probably carved it with their power. I could probably make a tub. I wonder what else I could make." Kenny continued talking while Alicia got acclimated to the space. They were used to this routine, and Alicia found comfort in it, allowing her to decrease her anxiety. The walls of the room were a mixture of wood and metal. Alicia began to see how the bedroom was shaped from what was a stock room or something similar. The bathroom had a toilet and a bathtub that appeared to be marble. The fixture for the tub was metal and came directly from the wall. It was amazing what transferred to this world and what didn't. Alicia started filling the tub with water, delighted when it worked. Despite Retta's assurance, Alicia hadn't been optimistic. Then she had to wrangle a squirming 8-year-old into the tub. She located a bottle of very human shampoo and a bar of soap that was probably handmade in the in-between. Once Kenny was settled in the tub with his hair washed, Alicia went and looked at the clothes on the bed. Kenny's clothes looked reasonably easy to understand. The pants were a drawstring. The shirts seemed to have 2 triangle pieces that overlapped and tied on the sides. It was almost like their taekwondo uniforms. Her clothes were another matter. It looked like a dress cut down the middle and then cut up into shapes. Then the shapes were sewn back together, except now the sides weren't even. There were ties everywhere, and Alicia had no idea how it was supposed to go on. She hated dresses. They left her feeling vulnerable, and most importantly, she hated fighting in them. Alicia checked on Kenny and then took a better look at the room. The bed took up the majority of the room. It was large, probably bigger than a king size. She reached down and touched it. The bed was soft but not built in a factory. On the walls, there were various pieces of art that all seemed to be vegetable-themed. Alicia shook her head at the choice and moved to the last item in the room. There was one more door, although this one was closed. She took a deep breath and opened it. It was a large walk-in closet. There were piles of clothes stacked on shelves. The floor held shoes in various sizes. There were boxes of items that came from the human world. Some looked like canned food. Others were first aid supplies. Alicia was surprised to see so many human goods stacked above the bookstore. Then, thinking back to Retta's story, she decided it was best not to think about it too much. Instead, she picked through the clothing and located pants and a shirt similar to her son's. She closed her eyes, trying to remember the walk here, trying to remember what people were wearing. She came up blank. She had been too busy, focused on the empty houses and the growing plants to remember the people all that much. She couldn't help wondering how women were even treated here. For the first time it sunk in how far away from home she was, and how she could no longer rely on her own set of rules. She sank to the floor of the closet, and clutching the clothes, began to rock back and forth. Her mind flared with anxiety, and she let it overwhelm her. Then she focused on what was important, her son. She let herself enjoy the sensation of moving back and forth with the press of the floor into her body. Then she stood up and went to get her son out of the tub. It took a while to wrangle Kenny into the new clothes. Then she had to get herself cleaned and washed. She knew that Retta was on a timeline, and she did not want to make him late. It was probably fine. Well, hopefully. If he wanted them to hurry up, then he would probably shout at them, and he hadn't done so. When they walked downstairs and saw Retta was still working on bagging something up, Alicia relaxed a little. She hated being late. Retta had several cloth bags laid out on the table. Each of them seemed to be the size of a plastic shopping bag. Retta was gathering the bags into 2 larger canvas bags. "Do you want me to help carry anything?" Alicia offered. Retta looked up as if startled by her request. He then shook his head and put one of the canvas bags on each of his shoulders. If this is some male pride thing, then I assure you that I am capable of carrying a bag. It won't emasculate you either. No, it would not. I'm just concerned about what would happen if we were stopped. If anything were to happen, carrying a bag would be the least of my problems. I'm human, and I think if it came down to them searching bags, they would notice this. Besides, you said it is safe. It is safe. You will both be fine. You have to decide. It is either too unsafe for me to carry a bag, or we really shouldn't go out at all. Or everything will be fine and I can help you carry the bags. The streets were empty when they left. Retta locked the door with one bag on his shoulder. Alicia was carrying the second. The bag was a little heavy, and she was glad Retta didn't have to hold both of them. They walked for long enough that the bag had dug into both of Alicia's shoulders. Kenny was getting bored and trying not to show it. His attention would wander and his steps would slow down. He would open his mouth to speak, probably to complain, and then glance at Retta. His mouth would close. His body would slump, and he would straighten and pay attention again. Alicia was trying to gauge the time. It had taken them hours to get to the bookstore. They had to have spent hours in the bookstore as well. Yet the sun was still up in the sky, like it was only a little after noon. The sky itself was clear, not even clouds to be seen. Were there clouds here? If not, then there wouldn't be rain. If there was no rain, then how would they have water? Her mind was caught up in the endless loop of questions. She was about to ask Retta when they stopped. The downtown area had transformed into a place that had seen better days. The building they were in front of looked like a supermarket. The set of doors framed glass that, for some reason, did not exist in this world. The trio stepped through the empty frame. The front of the store was lit from the sunlight streaming in. The front of the store was glass that did exist. The building was empty of all the shelving. However, the register counters were present and looked like they had been turned into bedrooms with cots set up in the middle of them. Some of the other counters existed as well. The one in the back had fabric hanging above it from the ceiling, cutting off the view. There was a giant pit in the center of the store, with a handful of elves breaking off parts of the hole and lifting them into a large metal container. "They're mining?" Alicia asked. "The throne has assigned them to dig the earth for organic rock. Our people prize it, as it can be a vessel for magic. They will bring up the earth and then sift through it, making sure to find even the smallest piece. This is dangerous, tiring work, but the quota keeps growing. And now most are unable to stop unless they wish to be tried as a traitor." Retta started walking back to the closed-off section. Alicia stopped and looked at the elves. They were covered in sweat and dirt. Something bothered her. It took a second of watching before she realized that they looked defeated, like they had lost all hope. Kenny started to pull on her hand, walking towards Retta. She followed, but she couldn't take her eyes off their work. They were going so fast, and dirt and rocks were going in all directions. No wonder it was dangerous. "What is organic rock?" Kenny asked. "I guess that it is rock that is alive," Alicia said. "How can rock be alive?" "I have no idea." "I believe you would call them fossils," Retta said, then slipped between the folds of the material and the wall. Alicia watched Kenny follow and then did so herself. Inside, there were more cots scattered around. It was not a large space, and most of it was already taken up with a young child playing with some rocks on the floor and a woman mixing something on the counter. On the cots, there was a man with his head wrapped up in bandages and a young woman who had her leg wrapped and propped up. The entire place was dirty. Fine silt covered the counters. There was dirt smudging their faces and coating their clothes. The air seemed as full of dirt hidden behind the curtain as it did out in the open where they were working. Retta walked up to the woman. They embraced and started talking in Elven. The woman's face brightened suddenly, a smile cracking open her expression. Then she took one of the bags from Retta. She looked through it, full of gratitude that needed no translation. Then she removed a small pouch from her apron and held it out to Retta. She seemed apologetic and a bit frightened, but he took the pouch with only a quick look inside and tucked it away under his waistband. Retta had walked back their way and pointed at Alicia's shoulder. She looked and saw the straps for the bag. With all that had happened, she had forgotten that she was even still holding it. Alicia slid the straps off her shoulder and handed the bag over to Retta, trying not to show her relief at the missing weight. Retta reached into the bag and pulled out a plump orange. He walked over to the child sitting calmly on the floor and handed the orange to them. A smile sprouted on the young child's face as they reached up and wrapped their arms around Retta's neck. When Retta stood up, the child's focus turned to the orange. They held it up to their nose and gave it gentle squeezes. It was then that the woman seemed to notice that Retta had brought company. She talked to Retta in confusion, her words becoming faster and more frightened, but he talked to her reassuringly until she seemed to calm. Retta walked back to Alicia and Kenny, putting his arms around them to turn them around and pushing them towards the exit. As they left, Alicia turned around for one last look and met the woman's eyes. They were full of suspicion and fear.